And even though my stepfather
Dia
had served in the
menceritakan,
army,
wah
the
ya,
violence and killing
dia
during that
angkatan
time of
darat
global
Oh.
upheaval
What can I do for you? What can I do for you? What can I do for you?
Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Berjumpa lagi saya Arash Manso. Seperti biasa, terima kasih kerana terus menonton Arash Manso YouTube channel, okay? Untuk yang pertama kali datang ke channel ini, jangan lupa untuk subscribe, like, comment dan share, okay? Dan jangan lupa untuk follow saya di Instagram, okay? So, untuk kali ini saya akan react yang part 1 saya dah react, okay? Pidato daripada Presiden Obama di Universitas Indonesia. Okay, so yang part pertama saya dah react. Dan siapa yang belum tengok boleh tekan di link ni dulu untuk anda lihat yang part 1 dulu. Dan untuk kali ni, untuk hari ni saya akan react yang part 2. Okay, so tanpa melengahkan masa lagi, kita nak tengok apa pula yang diperkatakan. Seperti yang hari itu, banyak yang diperkatakan mengenai kisahnya di kampung halaman semasa di Indonesia. So untuk yang part kedua ni, apa pula yang dicakapkan ataupun yang dikatakan oleh Presiden Barack Obama, okay, di Universitas Indonesia. So tanpa berlengahkan masa lagi, let's go guys. Kita react pidato Presiden Obama di Universitas Indonesia part 2, okay? So 1, 2, 3, let's go.
on Heroes Day to honor the memory of so many Indonesians who
Okay,
have sacrificed on behalf of this great country. When I moved to Jakarta, it was
Okay.
1967. It
1967.
was a time that had followed great suffering and conflict in parts of this country. And even though my stepfather
Dia
had served in
menceritakan,
the army,
wah ya,
the violence and killing
dia
during that
angkatan
time of
darat
global upheaval was largely unknown to me because it was unspoken by my Indonesian family and friends. In my household, like so many others across Indonesia, the memories of that time were an invisible presence. Indonesians had their independence, but oftentimes they were afraid to speak their minds about issues. In the years since then,
menceritakan kenangan dia semasa di
Indonesia has
Indonesia.
charted its own course through an extraordinary democratic transformation, from the rule of an iron fist to the rule of the people.
Okay.
In recent years, the world has watched with hope and admiration as Indonesians embraced the peaceful transfer of power and the direct election of leaders. And just as your democracy is symbolized by your elected president and legislature, your democracy is sustained and fortified by its checks and balances. A dynamic civil society, political parties and unions, a vibrant media, and engaged citizens who have ensured that in Indonesia there will be no turning back from democracy. But even as this land of my youth has changed in so many ways, those things that I learned to love about Indonesia, that spirit of tolerance that's written into your constitution, symbolized in mosques and churches and temples standing alongside each other.
Yeah.
That spirit that's embodied in your people, that still lives on.
Betul. Oh, ramai
Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity in diversity.
apa tu? Perkataan mungkin dalam bahasa apa-apa, saya tak tahu Nanti boleh bagi tahu.
This is the foundation of Indonesia's example to the world. And this is why Indonesia will play such an important part in the 21st century. So today, I return to Indonesia as a friend, but also as a president who seeks a deep and enduring partnership between our two countries.
Kerjasama antara dua negara Amerika dengan Indonesia.
Because as vast and diverse countries, as neighbors on either side of the Pacific, and above all as democracies, the United States and Indonesia are bound together by shared interests and shared values. Yesterday, President Yudhoyono and I announced a new comprehensive partnership between the United States and Indonesia. We are increasing ties between our governments in many different areas. And just as importantly, we are increasing ties among our people. This is a partnership of equals, grounded in mutual interests and mutual respect. So with the rest of my time today, I'd like to talk about why the story I just told, the story of Indonesia since the days of Malaysia, was so important to the United States and to the world. I will focus on three areas that are closely related and fundamental to human progress: development, democracy, and religious faith.
Religious faith.
First, the friendship between the United States and Indonesia can advance our mutual interest in development. When I moved to Indonesia, it would have been hard to imagine a future in which the prosperity of families in Chicago and Jakarta would be connected. But our economies are now global, and Indonesians have experienced both the promise and the perils of globalization. From the shock of the Asian financial crisis in the 90s to the millions lifted out of poverty because of increased trade and commerce. And what that means, and what we learned in the recent economic crisis, is that we have a stake in each other's success.
Yeah.
America has a stake in Indonesia growing and developing, with prosperity that is broadly shared among the Indonesian people. Because a rising middle class here in Indonesia means new markets for our goods, for goods coming from Indonesia. So we are investing more in Indonesia, and our exports have grown by nearly 50%. And we are opening doors for Americans and Indonesians to do business with one another.
Kerjasama hubungan politik
America
antara
has
dua
a
negara.
stake in an Indonesia that plays its rightful role in shaping the global economy. Gone are the days when 7 or 8 countries would come together to determine the direction of global markets. That's why the G20 is now the center of international economic cooperation, so that emerging economies like Indonesia have a greater voice and also bear greater responsibility for guiding the global economy.
Yeah.
And through its leadership of the G20's anti-corruption group, Indonesia should lead on the world stage and by example in embracing transparency and accountability.
Leadingnya Indonesia akan mengetuai.
America has a stake in an Indonesia that pursues sustainable development, because the way we grow will determine the quality of our lives and the health of our planet. And that's why we're developing clean energy technologies that can power industry and preserve Indonesia's precious natural resources. And America welcomes your country's strong leadership in the global effort to combat climate change. Above all, America has a stake in the success of the Indonesian people. Underneath the headlines of the day, we must build bridges between our people, because our future security and prosperity is shared. And that is exactly what we're doing by increasing collaboration among our scientists and researchers, and by working together to foster entrepreneurship. And I'm especially
Banyak
pleased
benda yang
that we have
dibincangkan,
committed to double the
entrepreneurship,
number of
ekonomi,
American and Indonesian students
macam-macam
studying
ni.
in our respective countries.
Ya. Ini bagus guys.
We want more Indonesian students in American schools, and we want more American students to come study in this
Ya.
country.
Exchange student program yang biasa dibuat di
We want to
universitas-universitas.
forge new ties and greater understanding between young people in this young century. These are the issues that really matter in our daily lives. Development, after all, is not simply about growth rates and numbers on a balance sheet. It's about whether a child can learn the skills they need to make it in a changing world. It's about whether a good idea is allowed to grow into a business and not suffocated by corruption. It's about whether those forces that have transformed the Jakarta I once knew, technology and trade and the flow of people and goods, can translate into a better life for all Indonesians, for all human beings, a life marked by dignity and opportunity. Now, this kind of development is
Cara
inseparable
seorang
from the
tokoh
role of democracy.
presiden bercakap yang sangat power
Today, we
guys.
sometimes hear that democracy stands in the way of economic progress. This is not a new argument, particularly in times of change and economic uncertainty. Some will say that it is easier to take a shortcut to development by trading away the right of human beings for the power of the state. But that's not what I saw on my trip to India. And that is not what I see here in Indonesia. Your achievements demonstrate that democracy and development reinforce one another. Now, like any democracy, you have known setbacks along the way. America is no different.
Yeah.
Our own Constitution spoke of the effort to forge a more perfect union. And that is a journey that we've traveled ever since.
Habis hai. Oh, sedap. Kita dapat lihat tadi, okay. So untuk yang part tu ni memang kita dapat dengar dan kita dapat lihat pidato ataupun yang diperkatakan oleh Presiden Obama. Untuk yang part tu ni lebihkan kepada secara formal, okay. Apa yang nak diperkatakan secara formal lah. Kalau yang daripada part 1 tu kita dapat lihat dia punya jenaka, dia punya apa, sedikit dia punya perkongsian mengenai kehidupan yang semasa kecil. Dan yang kedua ni dia dah sebut juga sikit tadi, tapi dia fokuskan kepada yang formal, seperti tadi yang kita dapat dengar tadi, dia cakap mengenai ekonomi, mengenai apa, politik, mengenai demokrasi, mengenai apa lagi tadi, apa, kerjasama antara dua negara, iaitu Malaysia antara dua negara iaitu Indonesia dan Amerika Syarikat. Okey, so dia merupakan satu ucapan yang formal lah untuk kali ni, untuk part 2 ni. So tapi yang saya paling suka tadi, saya yang apa tu, yang part program pertukaran pelajar antara Amerika Syarikat dengan Indonesia tu. Itu satu yang sangat nice sebab saya pun merupakan pelajar lepas saya universiti. So kat universiti saya pun ada buat macam ni. So dia ini yang apa, something yang sangat nice sebab kita boleh pergi cuba budaya baharu. Selain itu kita juga boleh kongsi kita punya budaya. Seperti Indonesia, dia boleh kongsi budaya mereka di Amerika Syarikat. So itu satu something yang sangat nice, sangat mantul guys. Okay, so itu yang saya dapat daripada part 2 untuk ucapan ataupun pidato Presiden Obama ni. Jika anda ada apa-apa cadangan ataupun jika anda mahu saya react, sebab saya tak pernah tengok lagi yang part 3 dan part 4. So jika anda mahu saya react, anda boleh komen banyak-banyak nanti, okay, untuk saya react yang part yang seterusnya. Okay, so itu saja daripada saya untuk kali ni. Jika anda ada apa-apa cadangan untuk reaction yang seterusnya, boleh komen di ruangan komen, dan jangan lupa untuk subscribe, like, komen dan share kerana banyak lagi yang akan saya react untuk anda semua. So stay tuned.